Welcome to Ira's Everything Bagel, where I talk with intriguing people about everything, their passions, pursuits, and points of view. Most artists specialize in one genre, but my guests have succeeded in more than one. Stephen Worbey and Kevin Farrell, Worbey and Farrell, are Britain's fabulous or notorious or uproarious piano duo. Are the votes in yet? I don't know. We'll have to check that. With more than 1 million hits on YouTube, and they are also authors of a new book featuring funny, ridiculous, and shocking stories about the entertainment world and its performers. The book, Well Strung, Terrific Tales from Two Tunes, is available now on Amazon. And for everything about Stephen Worbey and Kevin Farrell, go to worbeyandfarrell.com and yournameandmusic.com, and you can follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And Stephen and Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And you said our names right. People quite often don't say them right, do they? That's great.
I know, particularly British broadcasters, actually, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What I did is I watched those British broadcasters, and then I just did the opposite. So it seems to work.
That's good.
Yeah.
But you're on to a winner.
Yes. So 2 guys, 1 piano. Usually it's 2 guys, 2 pianos. So what's going on here?
Well, we're the recession version of exactly what you've just said, what usually happens. Cutbacks have affected everything. And we're thinking of actually getting rid of the white note soon, aren't we? And maybe the strings. So.
Maybe the piano legs.
Oh, well, it is getting in the way more.
Yes. I'll get rid of you as well. What we did first, when we first played together, it was on 2 pianos, but then we suddenly dawned on us that most theatres and concert halls only have 1. So why do ourselves up to business and play on the 1 piano? And it kind of became our thing, you know. And we play better on 1 piano than we do 2 now anyway, don't we?
And we have tried some of our arrangements on 2 pianos, and they simply don't work as well. It's quite interesting.
Well, I've watched many of your performances, and it's fascinating how the hands interact and under and over. And I believe it's all lip sync, but that's just me.
You're not the first person to ask that.
No,
actually.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're not the first. We did a show once because we quite often have a big screen above us during the show.
Then I will retract that statement, Your Honor, because I always want to be the first to ask these things.
Wait, yes, this lady said to us after the show, how do you play along with those 2 chaps on that video? And of course, it's us on the video live. I couldn't believe she meant it. Yes.
Now, just harder to do that.
Just to stir things up, why does Stephen's name come before Kevin's? Do you argue about that?
No, I think quite often a duo, the 2-syllable name will come before. Although Farrell is 2 syllables, kind of.
It lands better, so you've got Worbey and Farrell. It's da-da-da-dum, you know.
Rather than dun and da-dun.
Yeah.
So, naturally, duos try and choose the right name first. And, of course, I'm more important anyway. This is my assistant.
Dream. Dream.
And I have one other stupid question, and then we'll go on to the really important stuff, which is your book and what you did with the Judy Garland Gala, etc.
Yeah.
But why is the and in Worbey and Farrell sometimes an and sometimes an ampersand? Why isn't it consistent? No
particular reason. Sometimes on websites and applications you don't have enough spaces for the word and, so sometimes I use that as with the symbol instead.
Okay.
So, no.
What more importantly than that, was I the first one to ask that question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. At least I got one thing. All right, good. So why did you guys decide to write? But we should point out that you travel everywhere. You're internationally acclaimed, and you are wonderful performers, but you decided to write a book called Well Strung, Terrific Tales from Two Turns. Why did you decide to write it? And when you were writing it on the computer, did you share the keyboard?
Yeah. No, we're not sharing a computer keyboard.
Okay.
Well, because we have so many stories to tell, we've been travelling together for 20 years. It's well over 100 countries.
144, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
I think it's Kabul and all the other places that you don't want to go to that we haven't been to yet.
Yeah,
so.
We've been pretty much everywhere. And people, we tell stories. Everyone's been saying for years, you should write these down. Of course, a lot of people get people saying they should do that anyway. But we did start writing them down, and we started putting into a book. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and it was just a perfect opportunity. And a friend of ours called Simon Aves, he's been sitting with us for many, many hours listening to our stories, and he's done most of the work, I would say. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's done a very, very good job of it.
Yes, it is done as a conversation, and people that have been to see our shows always say, "Oh, when we read the book, they can hear us actually telling the stories." So it is written as a conversation. But we've actually had one of the most extraordinary times the past 20 years together. And then also beforehand as well, meeting up, because our paths have been very, very parallel throughout our entire lives, even before we actually met. But we've just been very, very lucky and very blessed in many ways. And we've been very spoiled in many ways. What we we started working together by accident. We had too much wine one night. So we are the product of alcohol.
As many people are, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've had a very, very spoilt time, which we completely and utterly treasure, because we don't take anything for granted, because we're well aware that at any point it can be taken away. So
we've had some really funny things happen to us, some outrageous things happen to us. And also the book's full of some stories that we think should never, disappear into nowhere, because there are things that the world needs to know in the future. I mean, because of the internet now, a lot of things aren't written down. And there's facts and some very interesting things that we just don't want to let die with time, and people need to know about them. Most of the music, about the great composers and so on, things that we've heard, and they need to live on.
Who's the most famous composer that the two of you met, either by when you are touring or just because of bumping into them at a party or some sort of meeting?
I mean, famous live composers is an interesting thing anyway. I mean, most famous live composer I'd probably ever met was Malcolm Arnold, I think. Tippett, Master Michael Tippett. What about you? Classical composers there, of course.
Yeah, I think in years to come anyway, although that he's making quite a name, is Ken Hesketh, who is a very, very progressive composer.
He's in the college, isn't he? Royal College?
Yeah, he's
head of composition.
Yes, he's high up in composition, and should be anyway. I think he's probably one of the most genius composers that is around. And then, we studied we went to college with John Wilson, who is a very famous conductor over here, has his own orchestra, and he's done stuff alongside John Williams that. He's kind of the equivalent of your John Williams in many ways, with the Boston Pops. So, we've met a lot of very, very famous musicians and a lot of very famous people. And what we tend to find is that a lot of the famous lot they gravitate towards us because they trust us not to go to the press.
So we put it all in a book instead.
We'll make them at it. No.
Kenny sent out a message to a lot of his friends. What did he say in the message?
When we first released the book, I've actually been sending them messages saying, "Hi, hope you're well. I must take this opportunity to apologise the way I've written about you in our book. That's £8.99 on Amazon.com. I'm almost embarrassed to wake up. It's an utter disgrace what we've said about you, but I hope you realise it's all about sales and nothing personal."
And talk about direct marketing, yes. You're selling to the people you're writing about. I love it. Yeah, that's great. How do you, because you write about so many aspects of show business and entertainment, you both come across as non-cynical. And that's important because, as you expressed earlier, Kevin, you have a certain sense of gratitude, and I'm assuming Stephen feels the same way. You have a certain sense of gratitude about where you are in the world and in your career. And a lot of entertainers don't seem to have that sense of gratitude. They just assume that they're entitled to whatever success they have.
I think the one thing about being a double act can work two ways. And when we first started working together, there's a well-known presenter and producer over here called Chris Jarvis, and he's just been famous all his life. And he came to our very, very first show, which happened to be accidentally again, the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. And he said a lot of double acts, it just doesn't simply work out. And so if you're going to be a part of a double act, the first thing you've got to do is look after each other. And I think and that's what we do, because the double acts are famous for falling out, or, one thinking the other one can survive without the other. And that carries its own difficulties. But I think the great thing when it does work is that you can kind of kick each other into place and keep reminding, no, you're getting out of hand here or whatever, so. And then there's the other so, I mean, that's what we do. We do kind of, we can, if one of us is having a down day, which I have to say is very, very rare, we look after each other.
And equally, at the keyboard, if we're performing in front of a big audience, if one of us starts struggling a bit or having problems with the notes or anything or memory, the other one will pick up straight away and suddenly make up for it. And that always happens without fail.
It's quite telepathic. I can tell. We both immediately know if the other one's having a hard time and what nerves I might have. And if I know that Stephen's having a difficult time, my nerves will just dissipate.
Yeah.
There's something that it's something else.
So we look after each other at the piano as well. And the lovely thing about being a double act, if anything goes wrong, I can blame him.
Yes,
I can
exactly.
blame him as well. So, yes.
You once said in an interview, they asked you about your concept of playing the piano, and you said you play a love letter to the piano.
Yes, it is rather like that. I think whatever kind of music you're playing, the delivery is the important thing. And not necessarily, personally, I think Kevin would agree, not necessarily the notes. I mean, some of the best musicians in the world, sometimes, they make mistakes. They maybe go a little bit pitchy, or they'll play, handfuls of wrong notes, but they can be the most amazing electric live performances. And you've got to tell a story, as you know, whether there's lyrics or whether it's music, you have to tell a story and put it across very carefully and meaningfully. It's got to be organic and real and live. And so many performances aren't, unfortunately.
And when you're both performing live, are you in the moment at that point, or are you on automatic pilot because you know each other so well and you know the music so well? And obviously we should point out to our audience, it's not just music, it's comedy. It's an entire act. So it's great performance.
The thing is that the comedy is really between Stephen and myself. It's not comedy even though that we started off, when we first started, we were actually a name called Katzenjammer.
Yes.
And then we had to change the name when we discovered that in German, that when we were doing a tour of Germany, that Katzenjammer literally means misery and depression.
Which at the time both of you were going through, right? So therefore you had to change.
And so we did actually start off doing kind of Victor Borg type sketches. And so it was very much that. And then we started working with this amazing director called Jeffrey Durham, who was married to a very famous lady over here called Victoria Wood, she was a bit of a national treasure, really, and then sadly died a few years ago. And he changed our act completely and said that the comedy needs to be between us two, and that we need to concentrate on the arrangements of the pieces of music. So even though that there is a lot of fun, it's
not stand-up.
No, it's really is more sit down. But we take the music very, very seriously.
Right.
But the thing again, we play such a variety of stuff, so we can do Rhapsody Blue alongside Bohemian Rhapsody, or but we don't dumb down. That's the other thing, that we stay true to exactly what the composer's wishes were.
That's so unusual in today's world. So that's great.
Yeah, we don't dumb down. There's no need to. You see, the thing is that, it does have the kind of classical crossover music certainly has its place, but it's not necessarily, you don't need drum beats and wind machines and all the rest of it, and almost a kind of watered down version of the piece. If you present music in a fun way, if you present even the scandal, what used to go on with the composers, suddenly you humanize these gods, and a person that that normally wouldn't want to go to a concert suddenly can engage with music that they'd never even thought they'd like, because quite often classical music particularly is over academic in many ways and scares people to death. But the minute that you tell somebody was actually an alcoholic, a womanizer, whatever, drug addict, suddenly it connects with the public.
Exactly.
And they, just makes it more real.
Yeah, quite often people will say, I would never really have listened to that, but I love it. Thank you. That's all we want to hear. I would never have come to see that. My wife brought me and I loved it. It's the best thing we could do.
The best compliment was I was dreading coming here.
Yes.
But I've loved it.
My wife dragged me here, but now I enjoy it. Yeah. No, that's great. Tell us a little bit about Judy Garland's 100th birthday gala in Los Angeles.
We've launched we've been doing something for years, for friends, basically, turning their names into music. We'd take a name, each letter of the alphabet is allocated to a note on the piano. I mean, this has been done for hundreds of years. I mean, Bach did it, Shostakovich did it, many composers have done it, but it's never really taken off. And people would like to know what their name sounds like as music. And it's a really interesting thing.
And what we do is we take the notes A, B, C, D, F, G. Yeah. So they are kind of represent those notes and that part. And then the rest of the alphabet is distributed amongst, the sharps, the flats. And then once every letter has been allocated a note, there you've got the musical alphabet. And from that, you can then find out what people's names sound like.
We find out what kind of music they might like, or what style they like and so on. And, of course, there's no limit to what you could do. And some names sound absolutely amazing. Some sound kind of scary. You don't know how it's going to be. And we played this for our friend Lorna, who we've known many years, Lorna Luft, Judy's daughter. And she was quite taken aback. She was amazed.
Well, because they were launching her mother's fragrance, Judy Garland fragrance, for the 100th birthday, she said, why don't you turn my mother's name into music? And so that's exactly what we did. And you can see it on YouTube. You can listen to it.
When we picked out those notes, I have to confess I was a bit terrified. Because I thought, what we're going to do? How are we going to do this?
It was extremely chromatic. But we managed just shifting a few chords and things. And the type of music that Judy would have sang, we managed to turn her name into music, into a song that she would have sang. And so at the gala, we were the first people on stage. In fact, at the very, very beginning, they showed the video of us putting the piece of music together, and then they used it throughout the gala.
And that basically was our first client with Judy Garland. Really saying something. That was a fantastic start. So we launched into a business, Your Name in Music, and people can, they can buy gifts for their friends for weddings and so forth.
It's a wonderful thing.
It's tremendous fun to do it.
We've even done it for funerals, what's great is that you can have a personalised piece of music. Not just for birthday or whatever. Two people getting married that want to walk down the aisle or have the first dance to, you can actually we turn their names into music. So it's an original composition that it can be done, with just piano.
The recent one we did was house music, and we thought, oh my heaven, but we did a good job. We looked into house music and recreated it.
And they were really very, very happy. In fact, the person in question hasn't received it yet because it's done for his birthday in October. So the family, it's an interesting one. But we sometimes also in our live performances, what we've started doing is getting the audience to shout out their names. And Stephen and I will then go to the piano and we will turn their name into music. And it's a bit of a
risk.
It's a massive risk because we are essentially going down to the piano to play a duet that we have no clue how it's going to sound.
Right, exactly.
And very, very quickly we put this piece of music together. Right. And it's also a kind of show-off thing to show the audience how in tune we actually are with each other.
Sadly, a lot of the audience think that the people in the audience shouting the names are planted and we know what the name's going to be, but it really isn't.
No, that's because obviously in a lot of shows there are plants, but in your case it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely not.
No. When you record that, do you send it as an audio file or is it video as well? So it's a combination, or how does that work?
Well, there's different packages that you can purchase, but generally an audio file, an MP3, and a piece of sheet music presented in a frame. I mean, At the Judy Garland Gala, they did a beautiful job of putting in a gorgeous frame that was presented to Lorna and Joey Luft, and it was the most amazing night. It was one of the best nights of our life.
Oh, it was absolutely wonderful. Stunning.
Yeah,
I mean, the school we will. Yeah, I mean, Stevens, there's different packages, but usually we will send somebody to the school so that they can give it to even if it's on the piano, then a pianist can play it to them on top of the audio recording that will get done.
Or a CD, if they prefer.
But
People still buy CDs, I think.
But we can do it for any form. If it was an orchestra, choir, whatever, as outrageous as you want.
Yeah. I could see it even with the video, and it's your own version of Cameo, where you're doing an original song based on their name. It's a great idea. I wish I had a decent name, but otherwise I'd send it in for that. But okay.
Well, you've got.
I'll try your name.
Yes.
It's Lorna that convinced us to do it, and she was absolutely right.
Smart idea, very smart idea. The two of you have so much going on. How do you organize, I don't want to say your day necessarily, maybe your week or month, because you tour, you record, you have the new business now, your name and music. So there's all this stuff going on. How do you keep it all together and organize?
Well, good point. This is something that we're trying to address lately because we've got so many projects on the go. Time management is a very important thing, and we're not the best at it, although we do rehearse a lot. We do keep everything going. Like we said, we've got Your Name in Music. We've got a very, very big concert coming up this Friday at one of Britain's most prestigious concert halls. It's at Snape Proms, which is in Suffolk. And it's a big one for us, possibly one of our biggest we've ever done.
It is. It's one of those concerts that it's kind of we're surprised that they finally booked us. Really, it's taken about so many years, and I know that it's raised quite a few eyebrows because it is so highbrow, and it's all the top musicians in the world that actually get booked, and it's quite unusual that they've taken what they might perceive as a risk.
Well, you have to do that sometimes, after all.
Yeah, I have every faith in how it's going to go. I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, have you ever tried to convince Stephen to wear glasses so that you could both look the same?
He does. Yes.
Oh, he does have glasses.
I have to wear reading glasses.
Oh, there we go. Yes, there we go. Okay. Do you finish each other's thoughts, especially because you have such a long relationship? And on stage when you're playing, and as you say, you cover for each other in case one gets fatigued or forgets something. And you also have the humor, which also is this interaction that goes on.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say, because in particular, when we start, what happens when we're working on a new show, because we're always writing something new. And when we get involved so deeply where you're starting to dream it, when we're sitting down on the table, it gets to the point where we're not even speaking to each other. And then, I don't mean that we're not speaking to each other. It comes out, Stephen will go, and I will then say, yes, I completely agree with you. I was going to suggest the same thing.
Yeah.
And you are so in tune and on top of absolutely the whole thing that, you do finish each other's thoughts.
It's that subconscious connection, I think, that helps, especially when you're creating, to be able to do that.
Well, the funny thing is that when we first started working together, when we were just starting to rehearse together, and it was quite clear that this was going to become, actually the first time when we first performed, we realized that we stepped on something that was magical, that was going to take control, that already had done. And it created its own kind of bubble and rhythm, to the point of that if Stephen got a cold, I got a cold. If Stephen got a spot, I would get a spot in the same place. It was quite weird that our bodies and, it was to the point that when we first started working together, people thought we were twins.
Interesting.
Nowadays, as it's gone, and so a lot of people used to come up to you and say, are you two related? I thought you were brothers, and that. And it hasn't happened for many years, but recently, somebody in a shop said to me, are you two brothers? No, are you two related? And I went, no, but that's lovely of you to say so, because nobody has said that for years. And she went, oh, no, I just thought you were father and son.
Well, Stephen has told me privately that he feels he's more handsome than you. But I can't accept it. I think you're both equally handsome. So that's
very kind. Thank you.
Absolutely. The last question: best experience that you two have had on stage, and it may differ. In other words, you may have a different perception, although based on what we were just talking about, you have the same perception, but it might differ.
When you said that, I'm sure both of us thought of the same thing immediately.
The Lad.
Yes, it happened in a very well-to-do festival in Yorkshire in the UK called Grassington. It was the Grassington Festival. It was early on in our career. And we were playing the Carnival of the Animals by Sanson. And we were playing the Swan, which is a very serene, lovely piece of music. We had a comedy moment in the Swan. So it was this beautiful piece of music. And all of a sudden, there was a gunshot. And from the top of the stage, a swan fell and lots of feathers. So the swan was shot in the middle of it. And
this young 10-year-old lad couldn't stop laughing his head off. Because we'd set it up, you know. Yeah. We just thought it was quite outrageous that
it was a shock.
This beautiful piece of music is ruined by the swan getting shot. And the lad couldn't stop laughing.
As I'm doing now.
So much so that
he wouldn't stop laughing.
His dad had to put his hand over his mouth.
We were playing the next piece. We'd finished the next piece. He was still laughing.
And he was convulsing. He was shouting his head off. The swan got shot. And we received this email a few days later from the parents saying that, that they were hope that their son hadn't interrupted the show. But they said that they'd chosen our show out of all the different concerts that were going on as his very first concert to go to, and they said thank you for giving him such an amazing experience and introducing him to such good music. And that, for both of us, was an amazing moment because we did the same thing for him as Victor Borg did to us.
Yeah. Right. Ironically, it probably also was the kid's swan song.
Yes.
So, and that's it.
Never forget it.
No, it's just amazing that we've had amazing experiences like, well, in Canada, when we played in Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, yes.
They asked us to go over and do a kind of last night of a proms show. And so we did in this place to thousands of people.
The Algoma Conservatory concerts.
And they want to, this was, that's actually, I was practically in tears. They wanted all the kind of pomp and ceremony. It was an evening of London music, but in the middle of Land of Hope and Glory, we slipped in their national anthem and people couldn't believe it.
Oh, Canada. Their whole audience stood up. Lots of them were crying. They were doing this. And then we started crying. So there's another moment. There's so many of them, but it was something that you never ever forget.
Yeah.
That's great.
We're so spoiled with all these magical moments, really.
I should say, too, before I let you go, for actually letting you go, how did the two of you meet?
Well, we met at the Royal College of Music. Kevin was doing film music. I was doing performance. You did music for TV films.
I wrote a lot of music to some of the worst films ever made. My most successful, awful film was a film called Never Play with the Dead.
Good advice.
It was, very good advice. And I saw a review on a Brazilian website, and I thought, oh my God, there's a review of my film, Never Play with the Dead. And so I downloaded and went onto Google Translate to read the review of Never Play with the Dead, and it was basically never watch this film.
Well, the music was marvellous.
The music was marvellous.
So, we got together by accident. We started playing the piano by accident, but when we did, we both thought, oh my word, we've got to do something with this. And we've not stopped since.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guests have been Stephen Worbey and Kevin Farrell. Worbey and Farrell, internationally acclaimed concert pianists with more than 1 million hits on YouTube, who are also authors of Well Strung, Terrific Tales from Two Turns, available now on Amazon. For everything about Stephen Worbey and Kevin Farrell, go to worbeyandfarrell.com and also yournameandmusic.com, which I'm going to go to, and follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And Stephen, Kevin, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And join us every Thursday for a new schmear on Ira's Everything Bagel.